My name is Jordan Sorrell. I'm board member for the Southeast Chicago Commission. Welcome to the SECC's second annual Economic Development Symposium. This year, symposium is completely virtual and accessible on demand. Thanks to our partner, CEI Media Group, the SECC can bring vital resources to help your businesses during these evolving economic times. I want to acknowledge Diane Burnham, SECC Executive Director, Elvin Charity, SECC Board Member, the SECC staff, and Symposium Committee for their hard work and efforts in making the second annual symposium a success. Today, I'm joined by Jonathan McGee and Natalie Wright, who will engage in a conversation about taking your brand and business to the next level. 2020 is a year like never before. Small businesses to large corporations have shifted their marketing and operational strategies due to the COVID-19 pandemic and the recent civil unrest. For the past several months, companies have leveraged the digital space to tell their story and engage with customers. The new digital economy has experienced a share of highs and lows during this time. Local minority and women-owned businesses such as Boxville, Rapparoo, Moon Mills, Chicago French Press, and others have used creative and innovative approaches to reimagine their brands that have resulted in connecting with their customers and growing their business despite these uncertain economic conditions. We will hear from our panelists about Branding 101, real-life strategies for getting your story out to market, and other insights that will allow your company to grow and scale as our local to national economy continues to recover. To stay engaged in today's conversation, please share the SEC Symposium on social media using the hashtags SECC and SECC Symposium 2020. I would like to now introduce our panelists. Jonathan McGee serves as the Deputy Director of Regional Economic Development for the Illinois Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity, the state's leading convener to support and maintain a strong economy in Illinois. Natalie Wright is the founder and CEO of By Grace Agency, a creative and digital marketing agency specializing in premier storytelling and growth strategies. You can read Jonathan and Natalie's full bio on the SECC Symposium app. Jonathan, I'd like to start with you. Briefly tell us about your story and what drives your passions daily.
Thank you so much, Jordan, and thank you to the SECC for this invitation. I'm so excited to be here with you all today, as well as with my fellow panelist, Natalie Wright, to talk about personal branding and talk about my personal story, as well as some tools, tactics, best practices, lessons learned, and strategies for success around how you can build your brand. My story starts on the south side of Chicago, specifically in the neighborhood of Englewood. My grandparents were Belizean immigrants, and my father was from the south side. I realized very early on that Chicago was not just the tale of two cities, but the tale of many. I went to Lane Tech High School all the way on the north side of Chicago, many times taking the bus for an hour and a half just to get to school and having to wake up earlier than many of my other students that I went to school with. And what I noticed is that there were different issues that I faced. There were different problems that our neighborhood experienced, whether it was a lack of economic opportunity, our educational system in my neighborhood suffered, or it was violence that plagued our communities. I knew that this shouldn't have been the case, and I knew that something had to be done to fix this. And so that's what motivates me. That's what drives me. I always heard that, your zip code should not dictate your opportunity, and that while talent is spread evenly across the city, opportunity is not. And so in my role here at the Department of Commerce, I spent a lot of my time thinking back to those days where I would travel all the way to Lane Tech and realize, what is it that I can do in my community? How can I empower and motivate others to take up, responsibility to ensure that everyone in our neighborhood can have those same equitable opportunities? And so that's what motivates me. That's what drives me. But there's still so much work that's left to be done. And, when it comes to personal branding, what I've learned is that storytelling is one of the most powerful forms of communication. And if you don't take anything from this workshop, know that you should begin any branding story or branding narrative with that personal narrative. And so with that, thank you for the question, Jordan, and I'll turn it over to Natalie.
Thanks a lot, Jonathan. I really appreciate that. And I want to welcome Natalie Wright to our panel today. And I would like Natalie, hi, how you doing, Natalie?
I'm good.
Excellent, excellent. Let the audience know, Natalie, more about you, your hopes, and your dreams as a small business owner.
Absolutely. First, thank you to the SECC and to Diane, whom I love. Just really pleased to be here, and thank you, Jonathan, for sharing. Just to quickly touch back to something that you shared, storytelling is everything. And I, too, would love to encourage everyone to just be willing to tell your story, not be afraid of having a story, and really just being an advocate for telling the truth and being authentic. That has been something that has helped me, catapulted me in my career. And I am a true millennial entrepreneur, so I'm here to own failing forward, being a constant learner, and just being willing to kind of go with the motions and make sure that I'm ready to pivot and just take on whatever's in front of me as I've kind of learned the business and learned the industry, especially as branding has changed and marketing has changed radically over the past 10 years, even 5 years. My first business was actually a fashion company. I started a label at age 19. I ran that business for 3 years, buying and selling, and it was such a learning experience. I had studied at several institutions in pre-college, Columbia College, the School of the Art Institute of Chicago, Pratt Institute in Brooklyn, and I knew very early on that I wanted to marry this fine arts background with entrepreneurship. And I just came right out the gate, just ready to go and hit it. Of course, my parents were like, "You're insane." And I was like, "No, I'm just eager." I'm so glad that I've had that experience. And I think some of the most successful founders are 2-time founders or 3-time founders. So during the time that I was running my label, I began styling on the side and working for showrooms and things like that, which actually brought me onto music video sets, and I began producing photo content. This was right at the cusp of the social media boom. So Twitter, Instagram, we were just starting to get into that cadence where, you know, a photo would be taken, edited, posted in 30 minutes and it's viral and millions of people have seen it. And so I was able to work very early on as it pertains to those new marketing tactics and techniques being really distributed to market. I decided to pivot and I ultimately pitched myself to Beats by Dre to be a content creator, which I don't know what I was thinking again, but I was able to land that deal. And that really was a huge turning point for me, where I was able just to get into rooms that I never expected I would be able to get into, but that was solely based off of just an eagerness and a willingness to execute on quality content. So I had the privilege of working with the former CMO, Omar Johnson, which is the Black man. Shout out to that. That's just amazing. And also former VP of Apple. So it was right around this time when Apple acquired Beats by Dre. And then in 2017, I started my business, By Grace Agency, and we focus on storytelling and visually storytelling, really just trying to push a narrative that's authentic and true to a brand and letting the marketing tactics follow that. So that's kind of my ethos. And yeah, that's a little bit about me.
That's wonderful. Thanks a lot, both Jonathan and Natalie. So Natalie, I want to ask you, so you're a founder and CEO, and you're a small business owner. Can you give us your perspective on what it means to create and build a brand?
Absolutely. So in my previous experiences, I've had the opportunity to work with some really large brands that have been around for a long time. And working with those brands that have been really sustainable and are able to be 20 years in, 30 years in, 50 years in, just based on the fact that they have solidified their branding. they know their core message, they know the truth that they're telling. And really, there's no wavering in that. Of course, there needs to be some evaluation here and there, and logos get updated, and maybe taglines are adjusted, but having a true core message is something that I was able to witness. And so I would say that creating a brand starts with your story, similar to what Jonathan shared. Being very clear about your mission, being very clear about your vision and your messaging, and then the name and the logo, it matters, but that follows. So I am very visually driven, as I shared from my arts background. So I think that amazing logos are very, very important. But through my experiences and with the wisdom that I've gleaned from mentors and things like that, it is so integral to always be able to fall back on that mission and always be able to fall back on that story. And that's why we can have mom and pop shops who've been around for 70 years with the terrible outdated logo, because that 50-year-old recipe has been passed down and people go there and their customers are really bought into that authentic narrative. So that's what I would share as far as creating a brand. And then just making sure that you empower your customers to be brand advocates, because an author shares that, you know, you don't decide what your brand is, your customers decide what your brand is. So just knowing that we're in this digital ecosystem, recognizing that Yelp, Google, all of these things exist, empower your customers to be advocates.
Wonderful, wonderful. Natalie, so Jonathan, as a social entrepreneur, civic leader, and now a leader in the Illinois Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity, what guidance would you offer businesses from startup to legacy on how they can develop a digital brand and presence online?
Thank you for that, Jordan. And I just want to echo a couple of things that Natalie said. You know, a lot of folks think it's about who you know, and somehow that will tie itself to your brand, but it's really about who knows you. And that was a realization that I learned from being a social entrepreneur. The other piece is your brand is what folks say about you when you're not there. And that really happens through the work that you do. And so upon moving to Chicago from Washington, D.C., I had to start all over. And the reason why I tell this story is because I was a senior marketing director at GW, had worked in Congress, had extensive experience in the national stage. But coming in Chicago, it's what I was saying, no one wants no one that anyone sent, right? And so I was flabbergasted because, you know, as someone who had, you know, really had built this very strong brand, I found myself back home in my neighborhood and no one knew me. And so really struggled to find a job. Struggled to find a job that would pay me what I was worth. And that was when I said, you know what? Well, why keep begging for a job when I can start my own? And I knew that those very skills that helped me succeed in DC would be the very skills that would help me succeed here in Chicago. So the first thing I did was, number one, LinkedIn is probably the most powerful professional networking tool to date. I say that because a lot of folks may argue it's Facebook or it's Instagram or it's Twitter. But there's a crazy stat. 70% of LinkedIn is baby boomers, Gen X, Gen Y, 30% is millennials and Gen Z. So that means that everybody, who's anybody, that can invest in your business, help grow your business, help coach and mentor you to build your business, is there. The other thing is that given you can put anything on there as long as you want, as extensive as it is, you're not relegated to one page. You have a whole digital presence. And that's not even your website, right? You can have a website, but this is a tool that is ever evolving. They just announced not only a story feature, right? Because they realized the pressure that they have from other social platforms, but LinkedIn had a live feature as well. And so, you know, I just cannot impress upon businesses to, you know, understand that when you think about how do I build my brand professionally, you need to make sure that you're in a space where there's other folks that are doing that work. But for the folks that are mom and pop shops, that are smaller shops, right, that are micro businesses and solopreneurs, we know that that can be a challenge. And so, you know, a lot of the times you have to find surrogates. And Natalie talked about this. Those can be your customers. But I would argue that you need to build an ecosystem of support. And, you know, what I did was I leveraged my partners that I had in Washington. I leveraged boards that I was on that were affiliated with the work that I was pushing to promote my events, to put my organization on their page, to make sure that they're retweeting everything that I put out. The other piece of this that I think is important that, you know, I think a lot of folks don't think about is the power of video. Because you can tweet, you can do a great post, a picture may be worth 1,000 words, but a video is priceless. And it's priceless because of the ability to engage someone virtually. I think that what COVID-19 has helped us realize is that we can do a lot over video. Even if we don't like it, I think we understand what we can do. Now, is the connectivity still there? No. But when you think about marketing, when you think about branding, that ability to tell a story, to create an experience virtually, where you kind of leave from watching it, you know, feeling fired up, those endorphins are moving. Like, that is what drives folks to action. I think about when you watch a really good movie and at the end, your heart's beating fast and you're just fired up. That is the same experience that you should seek to create. And, you know, some of the most effective small businesses that I've seen with great brands are ones that have been able to strike a balance between both the traditional and the non-traditional. And that is, when you think about organizations like Natalie said, that have strong word of mouth. You know, on the South Side, I love Harold's, right? Harold's has become the Chicago chicken spot for the city, right? But we know it's Uncle Remus on the West Side, but I would argue that you have rappers, you have the residents, you know, and we know that some Harold's are better than others, but they all enjoy that brand identity. And some Harold's actually are better digitally than others. But the point that I'm making is that if you're a small business and you're seeking to go to become an enterprise, right? You're seeking to get to a space where, yeah, I can have a social media team or I can hire a consultant. It's really going to start with being able to strike that balance and understanding that it's not just one platform, right? And we have new platforms every day. So you have LinkedIn for the networking piece. You know, you have Instagram for a certain target audience. You've got Facebook, which is like the catch-all. You've got Twitter, right, which is more fast-moving. You've got Snapchat. Now you have TikTok. You've got YouTube. I mean, there's video games, social, digital platforms. And so the point that I'm making is that it requires that pivot, but it also requires innovation. And that requires the ability to accept feedback and course correct. Where most businesses fail is they keep trying to do the same thing and expect a different result. And we all know that that's the definition of insanity. You can put flyers up. I think, you know, flyers are great just to say you did it, right? And maybe someone sees it. But where I realized that flyers really miss the mark is, unless you take it and put it in your pocket, and even then you might forget those pants and leave them somewhere downstairs, there's no click-through rating, there's no open rate, there's no way to capture the information for that person so you can engage them later. We now live in a very digital world. And so, you know, there's other equity issues here, the digital divide, right? And so I want to make sure I'm speaking to my audience that may not be as digitally savvy, you know, but you can learn, and it's not as cumbersome as folks make it out to be. And I think now in the government space, we see everyone across the spectrum. We see baby boomers who've been in business for 80 to 90 years, right? And have third generation businesses who have now for the first time learned how to tweet and use Facebook, and they love it. But I think that they have to have someone else that's there to help them. And so what I want you to take away from this is build your ecosystem of support. Have that board of directors, right? These are individuals who are not just your forceful advocates, but they're your senior advisors. They're the ones that you trust. That's why you have them with you. It's going to give you the hard news to say, hey, I don't think this is working, and you need to course correct. So, you know, in government, what we try to do is we set up our small business development centers that are here to help you think about this, not just a business plan, but how you market. We have our regional teams and our frontline teams that are aimed at helping to provide that technical assistance. You're not in this alone. And again, I think the last piece I'd share is most businesses fail because they don't seek out that support. And that's why I'm here to share with you, not only is the SECC a resource. You have the state of Illinois, you have the county, right? And then ultimately you have national organizations that are here for you as well. So I'll end there, but I think, from small business to micro business to, enterprise, it always requires having that ecosystem of support, continuing to maintain those relationships and that brand identity, and never drifting away from that story.
Thanks a lot, Jonathan. I just want to take a quick moment to remind everyone that's watching us right now, share your thoughts about the panel on social media using the hashtag SECC Symposium 2020. And so I want to shift real quickly to the both of you, because I know you have experience both in entrepreneurs, but also a extensive track record in the community and elsewhere. So I'll start with you first, Natalie, and then you can jump in, Jonathan. What are things to consider with your personal brand and a company brand?
So I actually have a clarifying question. Are you saying how do they interact as far as like your company brand, or just what is the difference between both?
Yeah, that's a good question, Natalie. I think it's around what is the difference between your personal brand, your company brand, but also how do you integrate that as well too, because we're in a digital space now, and sometimes those become one and the same.
Absolutely. So this is it's really a fun topic for me. We are totally living in personality-driven branding. This is just the world that we're in right now. And I think there's a lot of pressure to brand yourself. And I would argue that it's not 100% necessary to brand yourself to propel your business. And I think that as far as if you are a small business owner, I don't think it's necessary for you to have to brand yourself and complement or to have this duality with your own company. I think to Jonathan's earlier point, from a professional standpoint, LinkedIn is incredible. And there's a lot of finesse, I think, that's there that is very much so a reflection of personal branding and really kind of knowing your way around the platform, creating content, either long form or short form, that is complementary or communicates your mission and your vision. But specifically, this question made me think about business owners who feel that they may need to brand themselves in tandem with their company. And I would argue that boundaries are important. When you turn yourself into a brand, you run the risk of burnout. And you also are really vulnerable a little bit. And it's kind of like, operating as an LLC, that liability is a little bit out there, versus your personal liability. So I think that boundaries are really important as it pertains to a personal brand and your company's brand. But I think that authenticity is always going to be the way. I think there's a really kind of beautiful dance that can occur between just being yourself, being honest, and also kind of having the business acumen in articulating that professionalism that you may want. And I will throw out this example, which is very out there, but Cardi B did a great job branding herself. She's in Super Bowl ads, but she's a potty mouth. It's terrible. But she has branded herself and she has used her story and she's authentic to herself. So that is what I would encourage. I'd love to hear what Jonathan thinks and potentially piggyback off of some things that he's thinking about. But it's a very complex, I think, and multifaceted sort of approach between personal branding and company branding.
Yeah, no, I think you made a fantastic point, Natalie, and I just want to share this with you. If you want to go fast, if you really want to kind of take off and launch something, a lot of the times it's very easy to just align it with your personal brand. And that's because a lot of the times I learned that when I was raising money, most people weren't giving money to my idea, they were giving money to me. And what happens is when people marry their brand, their personal brand to their organization, the organization's good as long as they're there. Once they leave, it's over. And to me, if you want something that's just here today and gone tomorrow, align it with your personal brand. But if you really want something that's sustainable, that lives way beyond your here, you're going to do that hard work now, and you're going to wait, and you're going to, do that due diligence and throw that spaghetti at the wall and see what actually sticks. And then, when you really need to drive, you're gonna lean in. But I'll give an example that I think is really, really applicable. So for me, when I started the Global Organization for Applied Political Leadership, I very much leveraged my personal brand. And, I found myself, getting a lot of interest and people attending my events. And I had someone who was kind of working, under me. And so when I moved to Chicago, I had them run an event. And they ran the event in DC, and all folks kept saying was, "Where's Jonathan? Where's Jonathan? Where's Jonathan?" Right? They had successfully, now little do they know, I had successfully secured the speakers. I had got all the same partners. But, once I kind of walked away, folks were just kind of not really feeling it. And so what I said was, you know what, that's okay. Because we took that content, we had a video, and we pushed that video out. And eventually people started to see, wow, this is actually good stuff. Independent of whether I was there or not, they thought it was good stuff. There's a saying, if you do the work, the results will come. And it's better off when no one really knows who's behind it specifically. They may know who works there, but it's really the brand that lives. And someone that I believe, and I'm just going to shout her out because I think she does a great job of both, is Brittany Robbins. She started the Gray Matter Experience. And while Brittany has her own profile, the Gray Matter Experience has their own engine and their own operation. And when COVID hit, they were putting out different statistics about how Black and brown businesses were faring. It didn't talk about Brittany. It had nothing to do with Brittany. She actually has her own separate website where she markets herself and does different things. And so as the leader of an organization, when you're trying to do that separation, it's actually better if you start to dabble in other things and draw the attention away from what you're doing and allow your organization to free itself up and start to kind of brainstorm and innovate and figure out what's working, right? Because the one good thing I do know is that the public is loyal to no one, and that the media, is there for the next story. And so to the extent that an organization can get the attention of the public, that an organization can draw that media story, I think that they'll be great. There was just an announcement, from the Chicago Community Trust about $25 million to rebuild, the communities. Now, the trust brought in Helene Gayle, right, because she's this known leader. But the trust already has a brand, and now everyone's talking about the trust and the racial equity work they're doing. They're not saying, well, Helene Gayle's doing it. They're talking about the trust, right? And this is an organization that traditionally has not really stepped in this space. So it can be done, but it has to be a willingness upon the leader of the organization to really take a step back and allow for the engine of the organization to run. If you don't do that, again, you risk not just burnout, but you risk failure. And most businesses fail, again, because there is this love for it, right? Where I want to do it my way. A lot of place-based organizations, we've had multiple gun violence organizations that have failed for this very reason. So I hope that is helpful, but just wanted to kind of share that juxtaposition of personal branding and the business brand.
If I can also share something that speaks to this, as you're navigating, maybe you're starting a company and, you're trying to figure out how your personal brand aligns, if anything, or if at all, rather. Take a hard look at your target audience. If your target audience aligns with your personal audience, funnel those people there. But when they get there, they don't have to see your face everywhere. I personally have a women's organization. I'm a woman of faith. My women's organization shares the same mission that I share, but I'm very deliberate about not, blasting my face all over our Instagram feed and all over our content, because I don't want it to be personality dependent, but because our target audience is similar, African-American millennial women, a lot of the young ladies that are part of that organization came from my platform. So I think there's a dance, and you can do it very cautiously, but I think the intersection of a personal brand and a company brand, they should be complementary. I think it is helpful when it's complementary. They don't have to be, but I think it's very helpful. So I'll just share that as a final statement from that question.
Sure. So great segue. Natalie, I want to get some final thoughts here or insights before we have to conclude our panel discussion today. So I'll actually start back with you, Jonathan, first, and then Natalie, I'll ask you to chime in.
Awesome. I think I'm going to leave you with about, I'll say 3 things. So number one, again, a brand encompasses multiple things. It's not just your professional identity. I think a lot of folks tie their brand to their job, or they either tie it to their civic activity, or they may even tie it to their social activity, right? And even further, maybe it's personal, or maybe it's spiritual, right? I think that there's a lot of different ways that you can build a brand. But I think some of the most effective folks are the people who know how to strike a balance between all of them. And when I say that, it's a better story when someone is a civic leader, who's an entrepreneur, who also is a volunteer, who also, is leading the food drive for their local church, right? I think that, there's a tendency for folks to find a lane and stay in it. And while usually professionally, I would articulate that, right? Become an SME, become a subject matter expert in that lane, if that's what you're trying to do professionally. But some of the most effective folks that have built a brand understand that, number one, you have to have a variety of networks and relationships. So I want to kind of drop that point there. The second thing is that when it comes to relationship building in your network, really having your forceful advocates, and then just having those folks that, again, who are aware of you, they're aware of your work, but they're not necessarily your ambassadors, right? These are folks that are going to give it to you real. Your advocates are the folks that you deploy them when you need to, and you need to do a push. But again, that cabinet and those individuals who are saying when something's not resonating, because again, poor brand managers and people who have poor brands are folks that are surrounded by yes men or women, right? Everything that you come up with, they think it's awesome. And then last but not least, again, I just have to emphasize this. It's a marathon, not a sprint. And knowing that while nothing comes to a sleeper but a dream, it took Vera Wang 40 years to become famous. I'll make an urban joke. 2 Chainz, the rapper, he was in the Duffel Bag Boys group before he actually blew up, right? And there was a reason for that, because everybody has their time. And your time may not be now, and that's okay. But it doesn't mean that the work that you're doing is not important. So, branding is constant and consistent work. There's a tendency for folks to think about it as, oh, Subway, eat fresh, right? Like McDonald's, they love to see me smile, right? When it comes to personal branding and business branding, it's a little bit of both of those things. And you've seen brands burn out, brands that don't even resonate anymore. And so again, it's constantly, being innovative, learning how to pivot, and also knowing your market and your target audience too, to Natalie's point, because now when you have everybody in the same space digitally, there's a lot of clutter. And the only way you're going to cut through that clutter is if you have a unique message. And so again, part of your brand should also talk about how you solve a problem, right? I think, that's the key. If your brand is kind of this big pizzazz and yeah, it's got my attention, but what you're really doing, where's the substance behind it? And so for me, I think that is where I've seen the most success. When folks can talk about someone's brand and it automatically says equity. It automatically says, economic opportunity. It automatically says public health. It automatically insinuates climate change and issues that we see today. It automatically screams humanitarian, you know? And that's, again, goes back to the story should be there even when you're not. And folks in the room should be able to identify with that when they hear you and hear your brand name. So, you know, those are my lasting thoughts. I hope those are helpful and interested to hear what Natalie's last thoughts are.
Yes, thank you so much for sharing those words. And I think you really hit a chord there with what problem are you solving? I mean, that's your business case. So, you know, it's wonderful that branding really kind of brings you back to, you know, what problem are you solving in the marketplace right now? And I would challenge anyone who is dealing with this COVID crisis, who's a business owner, and you know, you're at a crossroad, you don't know what's next, take this as an opportunity to reevaluate what problem you're solving. And also take this as an opportunity, even in the midst of, you know, home Zooming and kids everywhere and those sorts of things, take it as an opportunity to reevaluate where you are, being willing to make pivots. Again, I know it can be very difficult to enter into spaces that are unknown, and, you know, maybe you're like, social media is crazy because TikTok, you know, like, I understand that it can seem really kind of outside of a comfort zone, but you have to be willing to make those changes because the case studies are there. We don't want to be Blockbuster. We don't want to be Borders who refused to pivot at the time where it was absolutely necessary to pivot. So I would say consistently push outside of your comfort zone, be committed to researching through yourself or through hiring market research firms or consultants who can really go out and not only help you learn your existing customer base better, but if you are looking to penetrate a new market or a new target audience, they can help evaluate and really help you learn who it is that you're seeking to help. So that's a huge thing. I'm a huge advocate for market research and think all companies should do it, big or small, solopreneur, or obviously Fortune 500 companies are doing that already. And then another point that I would make is hire the right people. A lot of people say that they are social media marketers and they're here to help you blow your account up. It's deeper than that. Don't hire someone for their tactical execution, hire them for their strategy expertise. A lot of people can execute an email campaign, but it's really about that person that understands branding and brand strategy at its core that can help you really advance your marketing footprint and get you where you need to be as far as sales and really make impact. So hire the right people, be willing to learn, be willing to adapt. And just remember that branding is really about your mission, your story, your message, and really just having a commitment to elevated visual content that will engage your base. And also video content, which you mentioned, Jonathan, is extremely important and is just, it can do wonders for your business. So I would share those things as things to keep in mind. Thank you, guys.
So thank you to our panelists today, Jonathan McGee and Natalie Wright. SECC really appreciates that you're able to join us and to share your insights on how businesses can build and grow their brands. I encourage you to remain engaged with the SECC. Visit our website at www.secc-chicago.org. That's www.secc-chicago.org for more information. The SECC offers a host of support services and resources for your business. The SECC is also a nonprofit organization. If you are capable and interested, please consider making a donation today. Thanks again for joining us, and thank you to all the other sponsors who make this SECC Second Annual Symposium a great success. Thanks again and enjoy the rest of the symposium.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.